Dear students, I welcome you to my English class. In this session, we are going to make a critical analysis of the essay Beau Tibbs at Home written by Oliver Goldsmith. So, after listening to this session, you will be able to discuss Beau Tibbs at Home as a descriptive essay, analyze the peculiarity of the character of Mr. Tibbs, and make a critical analysis of this essay. So, dear students, are you ready? Shall we begin the class? Here is a brief outline of this essay, Beau Tibbs at Home. Beau Tibbs at Home is a part of Oliver Goldsmith's A Citizen of the World, which is a series of imaginary letters from a philosophical Chinaman who writes letters home from London. And he is the narrator of this essay who uses satire as a means to describe the English society. The narrator, Lian Shi Atangi, is an acute observer of men and things, and he enjoys pleasant company. He is introduced to Beau Tibbs during a long walk with his acquaintance. Students, you might wonder, what does Beau mean here? The word beau is a French term which means a friend or acquaintance. So, for our convenience, this essay can be divided into two sections. So, in the first section, the narrator describes his first encounter with Beau Tibbs in one of his long walks, and he makes an observation on the peculiarity of Beau Tibbs, his dress, his manners, and his boastful talk. Mr. Tibbs is a poor man and he tries to hide his poverty by speaking too high of himself. The narrator thinks that people like Tibbs will have miserable times when they become old and they will not be respected by others. He is of the opinion that Mr. Tibbs would be treated contemptuously when he becomes old, and he is afraid that he would be employed as a spy upon servants or as a fearful object to terrify children. In the second section, the narrator describes how he happens to meet Mr. Tibbs for the second time, again during the long walks. But this time the narrator is alone. Mr. Tibbs urges him to visit his house and hence he invites to dine with him. Now, the narrator observes the peculiar behavior of Mr. Tibbs, who salutes every other person in the streets, and he has a habit of making notes of certain things in his pocketbook. Mr. Tibbs praises his wife and daughter a lot, and he wishes to marry off his daughter to a very noble man. Then he catches hold of the narrator's hand and takes him to his house, which the narrator finds to be in a poor condition. Here they are welcomed by an old servant, and the narrator comes to know about the real condition of Mr. Tibbs and his family. So the narrator comes to know that Mr. Tibbs is a poor person, but he tries to hide his poverty by speaking very high of himself. And the narrator doesn't like the vanity of Mr. Tibbs. Hence, he does not wish to spend much time with him. He makes an excuse and leaves his house after giving a small tip to the old servant. Let us now analyze the character of Mr. Tibbs. So, when you read this essay, what are the impressions that you get of the character of Mr. Tibbs? Mr. Tibbs is a poor, foolish, but a showy man. He dresses in a peculiar fashion. One day he will be in rags, and the very next day he would be seen in embroidery. And he is a great liar who pretends to be a friend of rich and noble persons. So you can see that in the essay he speaks very high of himself, and he says that he has friends with he has been a friend to lot of great people. Mr. Tibbs greets unknown people on the street and speaks about them in a familiar way. He has learned the art of flattery, and with his glib talk he is able to get some money even from strangers, but he never repays them. He speaks highly of his wife and daughter, which prove to be completely false. Mr. Tibbs tries to impress upon the narrator Tibbs, and he does not wish to spend much time with him. Hence, he makes an excuse and leaves his house after giving a small tip to the old servant. So, this is a brief outline of the essay Beau Tibbs at Home. So, now we shall look at the character of Mr. Tibbs. So, what kind of a person is Mr. Tibbs? Mr. Tibbs is a poor, foolish, but a showy man. He dresses in a peculiar fashion. One day he will be in rags, and the very next day he would be seen in embroidery. He is a great liar who pretends to be a friend of rich and noble persons. He often greets unknown people on the streets and speaks about them in a familiar way. Mr. Tibbs has learned the art of flattery very well, and with his glib talk he is able to get some money even from strangers, but he never repays them. He speaks very high of his wife and daughter, which prove to be completely false. He tries to impress upon the narrator by taking him to his home, but on reaching home he talks in an affected manner. He is very poor and impoverished, but he tries to hide his poverty by his vanity and useless talk. So, the author has tried to portray the character of Beau Tibbs in a detailed manner. So, we shall make a critical analysis of the essay now. This essay, Beau Tibbs at Home, is a satire on the English society of 18th century. In the guise of a Chinese philosopher, the author expresses his own thoughts and ideas on the contemporary society. This essay reflects the poverty and vanity of the lower middle class of the 18th century England. The people are very poor, but still they try to hide it under the veil of vanity. The use of mild humor and satire has made this essay quite amusing. The character of Beau Tibbs, although seems to be funny initially, leaves the readers to be sympathetic and melancholic at the end. So, I hope students you have understood this essay Beau Tibbs at home. So, here is a brief summary of what we have learned so far. We have learned the outline story of the essay Beau Tibbs at home, the vanity and poverty of the English society of 18th century and how it is highlighted in this essay. We have learned about the character of Beau Tibbs and we have also made a critical appreciation of this essay. So, in the next class, we will meet again with another new essay. Thank you, dear students.